Welcome back, everybody, to this, the 20th episode of Blue Collar, White Collar, with me, Kieran, and my co-host, Nicholas. How are you doing today, Nick?
20th episode? You can tell me that.
Yeah.
That's very exciting. That's a landmark.
Nick, can you turn your camera?
That's a landmark. And, 90 degrees?
Yes. I'm going to ask you to do this. Boop. There you go. That works better for what they can see. I should have asked you before we started recording. But that's how things go around here on Blue Collar, White Collar. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about the upcoming NDP leadership race election, which at time of recording, there's like 5 days left you can vote. So go out and vote.
That's right. If anyone is an NDP member and hasn't voted in the leadership race, you should do so online. The vote ends probably like on Saturday, March 28th, and then the new leader will be announced on March 29th. So yeah, this is I think not a race that has received a ton of attention, given that for a lot of people, I think the NDP kind of died in 2025. They had a historically poor performance, winning a total of 7 seats in the House of Commons, going down from 25. For context, Jack Layton in 2011 won 103 seats and formed the official opposition. And now in 2025, we got knocked down to 7. And it's actually not even 7 anymore.
It's
6.
It's like in 15 years, they've gone from being a chance at the throne to scum on the street.
It's been a decline for sure. And then a couple of weeks ago, I'm not exactly sure what day it was, but Nunavut NDP Lori Idlout, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, crossed the floor and joined the Liberals.
Does that give them a majority?
All but ensuring their majority once the by-elections are done on April 13th. So the Liberals have their majority. There's not really any chance of them losing it, and the NDP are down to 6 seats, which is pretty brutal. So I think a lot of people are going, well, that's the end of the NDP. But you know what? Parties back before. Let's not forget where the Liberals were in the wake of Harper and the late 2000s, early 2010s. The Liberals were in a really weak position before Justin Trudeau kind of resurrected them with Michael Ignatieff and then Stéphane Dion.
Oh God, I forgot about Dion. Dion was the Aaron O'Toole before Aaron O'Toole was Aaron O'Toole.
The Liberals lost, I think, official party status. I think they were down to 10 seats. 12 is official party status. So all to say, comebacks, and I think a lot of that depends on the leader and the vision that the leader is proposing. Justin Trudeau proposed a very kind of powerful vision to the Liberals. Some might disagree with that. We could have a whole conversation about Justin Trudeau and what he did for the Liberal Party, but that's not the conversation we're having today. The conversation we're having today is about the race that will end in a week's time, where either Avi Lewis, who is a Bernie Sanders, Mamdani-esque candidate running as a democratic socialist, running on a very bold platform, and his main rival is Heather McPherson. Heather McPherson is seen as the more establishment candidate, someone more akin to Jagmeet Singh. She's an Alberta MP, and it's going to come down to one of them. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Kieran, give me your initial thoughts on the race.
Overall, I thought it was kind of boring, honestly. Like, I felt like no one had any big disagreements with each other. Like, I listened to the debate, and they were all like, "Yeah, you're right, but we need to focus on this more." Or, "Yeah, you're right, but we need to focus on this more." No one actually came up and was like, "On this one issue, you guys are so off base." This is one thing that, you know, when someone does something like that, they stand out, they make waves, and I just felt like that there was none of this. Everyone just agreed with each other, but was just on, just like, which dial do they want more? Do you want more indigenous stuff? Do you want more? Corporatism? Do you want more union guy stuff? Do you want more environmental? Do you want the crazy guy who has no chance of winning? Like, no one really stood out with a different of. A true different idea, I felt like.
Okay, I disagree with that. I think you're right, though, that it didn't get a lot of attention. I think given how, given how poorly they performed in 2025, I think a lot of people kind of shrugged and went, it doesn't really matter. Like, the next party leader is doomed to the same fate. Mark Carney is too powerful. And the NDP vote has essentially collapsed. I think that there is a strong possibility, and we've talked a lot on this show about how Mark Carney has pivoted to the center and even the center right. There is no left-wing party right now that is prominent on the national stage in Canada, right? You have your Liberal Party, and then you have the Conservatives to the right of them. And that's basically it, right? We're right now a two-party country. There's the Bloc Québécois for sure, but they don't really have, a whole lot of sway. 2025 was the election where I think for like the last 100 years, I think over 80% of the vote was concentrated in two parties, and the other parties, Canada has historically prided itself on having a multi-party system, and yet it seemed as though people flocked to these kind of two establishment parties, the only two parties that have ever formed government. The context of Trump obviously was a huge factor there, but I don't think that means that trend will necessarily continue. And I do think that there is a scenario in which the NDP makes a comeback by offering leftists, progressives, something to believe in again. Because one of the big problems that Jagmeet Singh had was that people didn't really know what the difference was between Jagmeet Singh's NDP and Justin Trudeau's Liberals, right? I think that problem is gone, given that Carney has pivoted to the right, and candidates like Avi Lewis are further to the left of Jagmeet Singh, right? So the gap is going to be much wider than the gap between Trudeau and Jagmeet.
Well, look, I don't disagree with what you said. I just wish they would go about things in a different way. I don't think that the party needs to focus more on bringing leftists back to vote for them. The NDP should be about the working class people and working class of all stripes. And that's one of the things that I thought Rob, for some reason whose last name I'm forgetting, Ashton, was trying to push. Like, so many working class guys have ventured away from the NDP specifically because there's certain topics where they feel the NDP has completely dropped the ball on. For one thing, I don't know how many guys that I know who would be willing to vote NDP, but they feel like the number one issue that they're not dealing with is the fact that high immigration pushes wages down for those on the lower end. When you bring in large amounts of people who are unskilled, or we don't accredit their skills fast enough, you get massive amounts of people in the lower end of the job market, and that keeps people's wages down. And immigration was one thing that I thought no one on the stage really talked about. Like, it's the one thing that I think could have easily, like, you could see the union guy doing it because that whole reason. But I also thought that Tony McQuail, resident nut job and coolest man on stage. I wouldn't have been surprised if he brought the idea onto the floor, but no, none of them did, and I was pretty disappointed in that fact.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair point. I actually don't think that the candidates talked much about immigration during the debate. They've put out their kind of proposals on immigration, but you're right, it didn't get a ton of attention, and it's important, right? It's important to talk about immigration, in this moment. I feel like I should probably just state for the listeners that Avi Lewis and I actually have a history in 2021 during that federal election. Avi Lewis, who is, for those of you who don't know him, a journalist, a writer, an activist, and he also happens to be the husband of Naomi Klein, who's a very well-known author.
I actually knew of her before I knew of her husband.
Most people do. She's more famous than he is. Stephen Lewis's father is Avi Lewis's father is Stephen Lewis, who was the leader of the Ontario NDP and who founded the Stephen Lewis Foundation to fight HIV/AIDS in Africa. His grandfather David Lewis was the second leader of the NDP.
Yeah.
From 71 to 75, I think. And his kind of big thing was corporate welfare bums who, his thing was all about how the state subsidizes our corporations far more than it should.
So,
right? And that we actually...
So what we're learning from this for Nicholas is that Avi Lewis coming to take leadership of the NDP will be like Aragorn returning to Gondor and taking... Because right now, what's her name? Heather McPherson. She's the establishment bitch. And you want Avi Lewis to come in...
Don't use that. Don't use that term.
Oh, she's a look, I'll insult anyone that I want. It's not because she's a woman. It's because she's the establishment candidate, and I hate all politicians. So I apologize if you take it that way. She's the boss lady in this case, and you want Avi Lewis to come in and reclaim the throne from her Denethorian hands.
Well, I think we need to accept that Jagmeet Singh and his kind of brand of politics didn't work, right? He got smoked, and we need to try something else, right? Because being slightly to the left of the Justin Trudeau Liberals doesn't work, especially when you have Donald Trump threatening our sovereignty in the South. So you need someone who's willing to come up, who's willing to be much stronger, and who's willing to talk about economics, I think, and this is a huge lesson that I think the left needs to learn. And when I say the left, I don't mean the sliver of far left kind of woke, the kind of conception.
You mean everyone who leans left.
What I mean is people who believe that the state should play a larger role in offering services to people, to regulating corporations, to ensuring that that corporate profits actually go down, filter down to workers, which is why it was originally created, right? The NDP, let's not forget, originally the CCF came out of the Great Depression. There was a need for a workers' party that was proposing things like FDR's New Deal, and that's what they did, right? That's what the NDP, the CCF, which became the NDP in 1961, I believe, was proposing. And so I think that what we've heard a lot of candidates saying, and especially Avi, is let's go back to our roots, right? Let's really go back to being a party that is about people. His whole slogan is for the many, not the money. And I really like that because he is focused on ensuring that, these corporate welfare bums, as his grandfather talked about, are not the ones who are kind of hoarding profits at the top, these monopolies that control every sector of our economy. He's saying that we need to find ways, we need to ensure that that profits flow down to workers. So just to quickly go back to the history, when Avi announced that he was running in 2021 as a candidate for the NDP in a riding in BC that included West Vancouver all the way up to Whistler, I went out there and I just showed up and I was like, hi, I would like to volunteer for you. Because Avi was one of the only candidates who was talking about a Green New Deal, which at the time was the most important thing for me, and it still is a very important part of any platform that I want to see. And so I got to know Avi. I was part of the team, and for about a month and a half, I just spent all day, every day, campaigning, doing all kinds of stuff. Like there was a day when when we had organized a rally where David Suzuki was the keynote speaker, and so I went to pick up David Suzuki in a borrowed car of my aunt's, drove him to the rally, got stuck in traffic with him, spent time just chatting in the car, and then drove him back home. So that was a really cool campaign, and I had a great experience, even though we lost. Avi then invited me to come back and kind of continue working, doing some organizing work between elections, because he'd committed to running again. He felt like he'd kind of started something and wanted to build on that momentum. So I kind of came back to work as a paid organizer for the NDP in the riding where Avi was going to run again, and that was a 6-month gig, which I had a great time doing. And so, to see Avi announce that he was running for NDP leader was really, really cool, because holy shit, I know this guy, and I know, that he is a fundamentally good person. I think he's got big ideas that scare people, some people, I should say, because they are bold, because they are trying to respond to the magnitude of the crises we face, not just kind of tweaking little things here and there. And for me, I kind of think, you know what? Let's see what happens, right? Let's see what happens when we have a candidate, when we have a leader on the national stage talking about these things that nobody else talks about, right? Like corporate monopolies. Mark Carney never talks about that. Pierre Poilievre never talks about that.
Because he is corporate monopoly guy.
That's right. He is corporate monopoly guy. And so we need someone to call that out. And I think Avi is the one to do that. So all to say, surprise, surprise, I'm supporting Avi in the race. I've been doing some campaigning for him in Montreal, and we'll be attending the convention in Winnipeg next week. Did I tell you that?
No, you didn't. Wonderful. This podcast is not brought to you by the Avi Lewis campaign, just so everyone knows.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
No. If they want to send us money to advertise for them, to go right ahead. I won't do it, but Nicholas will do the shit out of it.
I doubt that'll happen, but a boy can dream.
Look, Avi Lewis seems like a great guy. Personally, I want to talk about each of the candidates a little bit so that we cover all of them, and otherwise some will get overshadowed. So Avi Lewis seems like a genuinely nice, friendly guy, and he definitely has the qualities that I think could be someone who could be a leader. He definitely has that kind of charisma that comes with him, and I think he's probably if I had to guess who would likely win this race, I think he brings more optimism and more joy to the race, and therefore more votes than the establishment candidate. Heather, not going to call her that word again because it upsets Nicholas McPherson. Yeah,
no, I just don't think it's a nice word.
I honestly, when I said it, I meant it as like queen bitch, isn't like she's the chick who holds the power, right? I didn't mean it derogatorily. I mean, I hate all politicians, so there's a little bit of negativity to it, but it's not the point.
Yeah, just be careful.
Yeah, so I think Avi has a greater chance of taking the race than she does because of that. A lot of people she probably comes off to as more sour because she has the face that, it looks less inviting than another person's face might be, what's the word? Oh, resting bitch face. Sorry, I had to drop the word in there again just to piss you off. No, she doesn't look as friendly. A lot of people probably see her as like the HR lady, and aren't going to want to vote for that kind of person. I think she'll probably come in second just because she has the institutions behind her. Other than that, her ideas felt very standard, what they would have been under Jagmeet Singh. So I don't think a lot of people are going to want to stick with her because she's the status quo of the NDP, and I think people are going to want to change what the status quo is. Rob Ashton, the guy who looks like the guy. Have you ever watched Forged in Fire?
No.
It's a great show where these people, they forge different weapons. Anyway, one of the judges looks exactly like Rob Ashton. Go look him up. Anyone watching the show who's seen Forged in Fire, one of the judges looks exactly like him. It's hilarious. Anyway, I was hoping that he would bring some life into this campaign, some union fight to him, and he did. But I don't think he made a big splash. He has some leadership qualities in him, but I feel like in the end wouldn't step up if it really came to it, against toe to toe against someone like Mark Carney or Trump or even Poilievre should he become leader of the country. What do you think about Rob?
I think Pierre Poilievre never becoming prime minister. I'll tell you that for free.
He's still the leader of the opposition.
Right. What do I think about Rob? I started the race because I've paid obviously more attention to it than the average Joe.
Or even me.
The NDP is ranked ballot. The vote will be ranked ballot, meaning you actually get to list of the 5 candidates. You actually put them in order. Only the 1s and 2s really matter. 1s especially. But for me, when I was
only matters is who you voted for.
No, I know, but it's not like an aggregate thing where it's like, oh, I got a lot of 2s and 3s, so like I win. But like Rob Ashton, for me, I kind of started the race thinking, okay, I'll probably put Rob Ashton second because I like his union message. He seems like a people's person, someone who's very grassroots, very connected to everyday, blue collar workers.
He reminds me of my local president, or a guy who used to be my local president.
Yeah. And we've lost so many of those people to the Conservative Party. I think a lot of people think that all the NDP voters have flocked to the Liberals, but that's actually not true at all. There are a lot of blue collar workers who used to vote NDP and have now started voting Conservative over the last few elections. So that's a very important demographic that the NDP needs to get back. And Rob Ashton, I think, speaks to that demographic very kind of directly. However, I have watched him in the debates. He does not strike me as a serious candidate for a federal party. I cannot imagine him getting on stage with, to your point, with Carney, with Pierre Poilievre, let alone being elected prime minister and dealing with, our allies in Europe and dealing with Trump and
I can see him at the table. I can see him at the table when it's a friendly environment, being the leader.
Yeah.
But seeing him facing opposition at the table, I don't know. It seems like
his public speaking is really bad. I'll be honest. He does not strike me as a strong public speaker. He was pretty awkward. I thought that he tried to throw certain attacks at Avi specifically, and I'll come back to that in a second because there have been a couple of disagreements between those two specifically. But Rob, for me, is also a bit one beat, where it kind of seems like all he says is, we got to take on the boss, and we got to make sure that unions are strong. And it's like, okay, I agree with you. What else do you have to say, Rob? What do you think about immigration? What do you think about?
That's the thing. I feel like most of them had the thing that they care about, and then a lot of it was just agree with what the rest of the party says.
Yeah.
Or slight tweaks.
What rest of the party? What does that mean? I think Avi has really set the tone for like here's what I'm proposing, and a lot of the other candidates have kind of responded to his proposals. Anyway, so that's Rob for me. Again, I realize that's not a super unbiased description, but that's the one that I'm going to give. Do you want to tell everyone about Tony McQuail, and I'll tell them about Tanil Johnston?
Sure. Tony McQuail is sent down from God above to anoint the NDP into the leadership position in the government of Canada. No. I love Tony McQuail. He has an energy that no one else on stage had. When she asked,
he's like a child. He's a child of Demeter, the Greek goddess of agriculture. Like that's
farms.
Who he is. He's a farmer.
He's old school farmer hippie. Hat. Yeah, and I love him for it. He brings big dick energy to the equation. When she asked if they were planning on rebuilding the party or becoming prime minister, and he's the only one who's like, "No, I'm going to be prime minister." Like you, Mr. Crazy old man, who is probably going to get 6% of the vote in this election, if that.
Oh, he didn't get 6.
Yeah, that's probably still.
He'll be lucky to get 1.
Yeah, he'll be getting position number 1 in the government.
Yeah.
No, he's obviously not the candidate that's going to win, but he's the candidate that we deserve, honestly. Tony McQuail, you got my vote, brother. No, I don't even know what to say.
Don't troll me like that.
I don't even know what to say about Tony. Like he's
Tony McQuail
bringing the farmer energy, but that's about it.
Okay, so in the English debate that happened last month, there was a small section in French, right? And Tony McQuail responds in English, and then the moderator says, well, would you be able to respond in French, given that Canada is a bilingual country with 2 official languages? And he goes, no, I can't respond in French. I don't speak French, but I speak the language of nature.
The guy's a druid. Which speaks to my heart as a druid player.
At one point he was like, that's what translators are for. Oh my God. Like, you understand Quebec is part of this country, right? Like, you understand there's no path to victory without Quebec, and you got to speak French to get Quebec. So yeah, that's just kind of ridiculous. But anyway, there you go.
I love Tony. I want him to be prime minister.
He's funny. But I'm sorry, it's like not serious. Right? It's not serious. The person I will be ranking second on my ballot is Tanil Johnson. Johnson or Johnston? I'm not sure.
I think there's a T. I think it is T.
She is the first Indigenous person to run in any leadership race for a federal party, which is super cool. She comes from BC, and she has been, I think, the surprise of the race. She is very well spoken. I think she has really good ideas. Talks about healthcare in a really interesting way, and the role that the federal government can play in supporting provinces with their healthcare systems. And obviously talks about how we need to step up on Indigenous reconciliation, making sure that reserves and Indigenous populations in general get more support, like clean drinking water, maybe that would be nice. And I do appreciate that she's bringing that to the table. So while I don't think she's ready to lead a federal party, I hope that she runs as the NDP candidate in her riding. And I think that if we do have someone like Avi, who I believe can bring some momentum back to the party, she could be a star MP. I think she could, potentially have a future. And this is a great start for her, but not ready yet.
Look, this is going to be a good playground for her growth, because with a new Liberal majority coming in, this is usually where they start to leak people back to the other parties when they're in power. So they'll be able to leech some seats in the next election, and I'd like to see her as one of them. You know, I enjoyed her on the debate stage. She was she brought a youthful energy that at least two of the other candidates seem to be desperately lacking. And you know, her and I clearly are going to have massive differences in politics, but overall, I thought she had a certain character that I would like to see more of her someday. I'm not going to be putting her as my number 2 or 3, unfortunately, but that's just I liked her. I did like to see her on stage. So overall, good luck to Neil. Unfortunately, you're not going to win this race, just like a man, Tony McQuail. Amen, Tony McQuail.
Let's maybe talk about some of the policies. One of the big places where candidates disagreed was on climate change and specifically fossil fuel infrastructure. The NDP at the provincial level is quite powerful in BC. They have the premier. They're the government. Same is true in Manitoba, where they're strong. And the NDP have long been the official opposition or the government in Alberta, right? When you get to Ontario and Quebec, the NDP is far weaker. In the western provinces, western and prairie provinces, they're quite strong. And one of the things that Rob Ashton has said, and I think this is true of Heather McPherson as well, though she's been a little bit more careful around this subject, is around the idea of like pipelines, for example. Because on one hand, you can say, well, building new fossil fuel infrastructure, building any kind of infrastructure creates jobs, right? Blue collar jobs, workers.
We love our jobs. More jobs, more money.
Yeah. And so, you know, Heather McPherson has actually received the endorsement of Rachel Notley, the most recent NDP premier in Alberta, who is, like most Albertans, very strongly in favor of more fossil fuel infrastructure.
Yes, because it's Alberta. Their entire economy thrives on oil.
It's actually a misconception.
No, they thrive on a lot of things, like beef.
That's right.
It's the Texas of Canada.
It is. It really is. We should talk about Alberta on a podcast one day.
Yes, 2 guys not from Alberta.
No, but I know things about Alberta, and you do too. And it's an interesting province. I guess they all are. But
not New Brunswick.
Avi Lewis, let's take the kind of flip side of the coin. Avi Lewis has said moratorium on any new fossil fuel infrastructure, right? He's not saying turn all the taps off, stop all fossil fuel production tomorrow. That would be ridiculous. But what he is saying is that we need to be transitioning to an economy that's far less dependent on oil, both on oil consumption locally and exporting it abroad. We need to become instead a clean energy superpower. And I think that is particularly poignant in the context of the war in Iran, which we should probably talk about.
Yeah, maybe next time. Once it's hopefully all over.
It's kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal.
But we had decided we were going to talk about this, and it is timely. To depend on oil, like it's becoming a harder and harder thing to sell, right? And to actually have alternatives when you are less dependent and the price of oil affects you less, that is a super powerful argument, right? We've seen the price of gas skyrocket, and a lot of times people think, well, that just affects people who drive their car. No. It creates inflation, right? Because everything, the price of basically everything is linked to the price of oil, right? Because if you're talking about food, for example, guess what? Food needs to be transported because lots of what we actually consume in Canada is not made in Canada. How do we transport those things? Well, oftentimes with trains and
trucks.
ships and trucks, right? So I think that there is a very strong argument for a moratorium and a Green New Deal, right? That's what a Green New Deal is, which is a massive investment from the federal government, hopefully with provincial partners, into creating new jobs, into both building the clean energy infrastructure that we would need, and also working to adapt our cities and our regions to better withstand the built-in kind of inevitable effects of climate change that are coming, that we've already been seeing every year now. That is what I think he is proposing. It's a very kind of bold proposal, but let's face it, like, climate change is here. The effects of climate change are here. And if we actually have the courage to build, an alternative energy economy, I think that would be super beneficial to Canadians across the country.
Yeah, I see. This is one of the areas that I think Avi is going to take a hit from the guys like the ones that I work with, is just union guys. While you may be able to promise clean blue-collar jobs, we don't see that. And so he's going to take a massive hit in the amount of votes he's going to get from being anti all these pipeline jobs, other types of oil excavating jobs. Really, I don't have a problem with a vision of the future where we have renewable energies. I want renewable energies. Hydroelectric is one of the things that we have here in New Brunswick, and it is awesome, other than the millions of dollars they keep putting into that dam because they built it stupidly when they built it. Anyway, I could rant about that. I'll have to another day. And you know me, I'm a nuclear guy. I want us to go nuclear. I think nuclear is the solution for our power problems in the future. But I don't think we should ever stop producing oil, because oil is actually such an important part of our lives. We don't even think about it. Like, so many things that we use, like from plastics to grease lubricants to oils. Like at my work, we always have oil for like cutting oils for saws and things. Oil is, you don't have to burn it as gas, and I would love it if we could transition away from that, because it's not good for the environment. But there's other things that we need oil for, and the world will always need it. I just hope that someday we won't need it as much as we do currently, right? But I don't think it's the kind of thing we should ever stop making and stop drilling for, because it's a resource that we should use in the places that it is most optimal.
I mostly disagree, though not 100%. I think that the two things. One, Canada's oil and gas sector is one of our biggest monopolies, in the sense that there are five or six major producers of oil and gas in Canada that control the entire market, right? That is extremely problematic when you have these corporations that are all, by the way, subsidized by the federal government.
Cut it.
In order to, right? Cut it.
Mm-hmm.
The profits that these companies record every year is astronomical. People do not realize this. The bonuses that CEOs are getting, the kind of cashbacks that that investors, shareholders are getting,
because oil is profitable. Love oil.
Is ridiculous. But profitable. Like we say profitable. Profitable for who?
For the people who make the money.
It's not profitable for the people who actually build the infrastructure.
That's actually that's not true. That's not true, Nick, because we get paid. You know how well those people who build pipelines get? I would kill to have their kind of money. Guys who weld pipelines, like they make obscene amounts of money compared to what I make. And it's like people from New Brunswick leave and go and they work in Alberta because Albertans and the oil fields pay so damn well. And then they bring all the money back here, buy a house here, and then fly out for 2 weeks, work, fly back for 2 weeks, stay. It's so, like, you make so much money. And when you kill those jobs, that's a lot of people who then have to move back home or lose everything. Like That's why putting a moratorium, whatever you want to call it, canceling jobs, it's not popular with blue collar people. So that's why I say it's going to cost him votes. I would like to move on to some other things because that's not the only policy that they're.
I just want to quickly respond though, because I don't think that you've painted an entirely accurate picture. These jobs are primarily not unionized.
They don't care because they make shit tons of money.
There are all kinds of instances where people are getting injured on the job and they actually get nothing back from the from their bosses. Workers are often very poorly treated in those places.
Oh, I'm aware.
So, and let's be clear. Sure, you might have a decent paycheck. It's temporary, and the wealth again is being hoarded at the top. You're not getting taxed on it. Avi has talked about a wealth tax, which I think is also super important. But you're right. I think that the idea of blue-collar workers who work in oil and gas, they like the reassurance of those jobs. I do think that if there are clean energy jobs where they can actually take many of the skills that they have and actually bring them over to these new jobs, I think that would be super compelling, especially if those jobs offer the same salary. If they're unionized, right, that's even better, offering benefits.
You're probably not going to get unionized and same salaries. The reason they get paid so good, one of the reasons is part of it's dangerous work, but is because they're ununionized, and so they can just hire whoever they need to whenever they need to get the best that they can.
I've heard some brutal stories about oil and gas workers. Like, there's some bad stuff happening over there.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of terrible things that happen. A lot of people waste their money out there. They buy these massive trucks, spend a bunch of money on drugs, and when they come home, they have nothing. But they go out there and they make the money because it's good money. And blue-collar people are not going to vote for Avi Lewis because of that stance, was my whole point.
Let me ask you this, Kieran. What do you think about the idea of public auctions? Avi Lewis has talked about things like public grocery stores, where the state would actually work with provinces and build grocery stores and sell food to people in the same way that we, sell alcohol in Quebec, right? The SAQ or the SQDC sells weed, the same way that we sell energy to people, right? With Hydro-Québec. Why aren't we selling? Why are we offering public options for anything that is considered an essential good, right? Because food, which is essential, should not be so expensive that you have to bankrupt yourself to afford a cart of groceries.
Okay,
right?
so theoretically, I am in favor of more options. More choices for the consumer is better in my mind. So a public grocery store per se, well, I think there's many ways that you could do it wrong and could negatively impact the economy and the cost of groceries. If it is market competitive and able to keep itself afloat, I have no problem with the government owning a grocery store. I would actually prefer if every single dollar that the government made, instead of forcibly taking it from our paychecks, earned that through commerce in some way. I would prefer if they got their money voluntarily. So if they are able to open a grocery store and have people come in and make money that way, I have no problem with the government doing that. Again, it could be done incorrectly if you try and hoard up resources and you then impact the price of groceries. And there's different ways that things can go wrong in that case.
But think about, like, let's take alcohol as an example. And I'll take a Quebec example because I live in Quebec. Alcohol is very reasonably priced, right? It's not an essential good.
I wouldn't know.
But the price of alcohol has not spiked in the same way that the price of food has. Why is that? Because even though alcohol is sold in private grocery stores, there is a public option that's called the SAQ, Société Alcool du Québec, that offers wine and alcohol for very reasonable prices. And so private corporations can no longer spike the price of that good, because then they're no longer competitive, right? So what if we could do that with food, as an example, where you have public grocery stores? I'm not saying close all the private grocery stores, but if all of a sudden you have a well-run public grocery store that is offering food at more reasonable prices, then guess what? The private competitors are not going to be able to spike prices in the way that they have been, right? Galen Weston, sorry to say, and I know that Jagmeet Singh hit on this guy a lot.
You trying to tell me something?
Yeah. Is there something we don't know? No, there was
Trying to give him the Jagmeet.
There was demonstrated price gouging, right, where they were actually inflating the prices of their goods. They were, when they were selling meat, they were like adding the weight of, like when they would weigh the meat, they would weigh, like they had these like bags that added, was it like paper bags or something?
I've seen cases of videos on the internet of people bringing scales to grocery stores and it not reading the weight that says on the package. So like clearly some shady things are happening. Look,
little things like that, making like less, like smaller amounts in like the same bag, to actually give you less, chips or crackers or whatever, like very sketchy stuff. Like we have demonstrated that Galen Weston, and he's not alone. Galen Weston, by the way, owns Loblaws, Maxi, and all those. We have demonstrated that they have all kinds of sketchy behavior, right, and that they're inflating their prices. And we don't hold them accountable for it, right? We just let them do it. And
absolutely
sure, you can kind of try to get regulators in there and going to each of the grocery stores and actually weighing that. Sure, we can do that, or we can offer a public alternative.
Look, you guys want to try that?
Price low.
See what?
It's an idea.
What?
Let's try it.
Yeah,
let's try it.
And look, I'm not going to say that it shouldn't be done. I want to see it tried at a small scale and then a bigger scale. I wouldn't want to see such a thing implemented on a federal level, because things that aren't tried and true, when you impose them upon everyone, oftentimes the problem makes itself visible a lot faster. So I want to see this in municipalities, then I want to see it take over provinces, and then should it be functional across multiple provinces, then I have no problem with seeing it at least be on the party's agenda for a federal election. But I would like to see it tried and true tested first.
But I agree with you, but where's the money going to come from? It's going to come from the federal government, right?
No,
it's not going to be the city of Montreal that's going to build grocery stores themselves.
Why
right?
not?
They don't have any money.
They'll have to make money.
Municipalities don't have money, right? Money flows down from the federal government that collects the majority of our taxes.
Maybe the federal government shouldn't tax people as much, and then cities and stuff can tax people at the rates that they desire, and then and then be able to pay for services themselves.
Well, that is a very interesting conversation for another time. I don't disagree with you. But all I'm saying is that right now, under the current system, the federal government has most of the money, right? And so if we're going to try these things, we're going to try them somewhere. It's not like we're just going to try it in Canada. It's going to be in a province, in a city specifically. But that money's going to have to flow down through the feds. And let's see if it works.
Sure, have a pilot program.
If it doesn't work, we tried, right? But at least we would have a government that is actively seeking solutions to the cost of living crisis that we're living in, because we are living in a crisis, and holy smokes, it is getting harder and harder for people to just get by, right? Let alone have savings for anything in the future. Voila. Kieran, kind of a final closing question. Do you think there is any scenario, let's say in the next 10 years, where a second orange wave sweeps across Canada in the way that it did in 2011?
In how many years? Well, I'll lay out a scenario where I can see
Ten-year
such a thing
horizon.
happening. Basically, it comes down to Mark Carney failing to live up to what he has promised for himself and his party. The Liberal government needs to fail horribly and show people that they're not worthy of re-election. The Conservatives will inevitably take power, and then through some hard work, good leadership, and a failure of the leadership on the Liberal side, I could see them coming into official opposition. A timeline, 6, 8, 10 years potentially. It's going to take work, and it's going to take the right leader. And unfortunately, I have to say, after watching leadership debates, reading their emails that I got way too many of, I do not
Everyone
see
agrees. There were way too many emails.
I do not see a person standing on that stage that I want to lend my vote to in a general election. So while I am going to be voting for the leader in the leadership race, I do not see myself voting for that person in an actual election.
That's fair. I hope you'll give. I hope you'll give whichever leader wins a chance.
Tony McQuail! Tony McQuail! I'll vote for Tony McQuail. Tony McQuail, I will vote for you for Prime Minister. I'll write you in. I'll write you in every single time.
I think just every ballot.
Tony McQuail.
Like, Kieran, you understand this is a provincial election and that Tony McQuail lost the NDP leadership race, don't you?
Sir, this is a high school and it's 2042.
Yeah. Sir, you realize we're voting for class president, right?
Tony McQuail. He's just a skeleton there with hair and mustache.
Yeah, exactly. So you realize it's the year 2050 and Tony McQuail died 15 years ago, don't you? No, I think, yes, other parties need to collapse. Mark Carney's still in his honeymoon phase. He will, like every politician, like every leader, fall. That's how it works.
The NDP needs to oppose immigration. That's one thing I will say. I think the NDP needs to oppose immigration. Very mild, limited, selective immigration, but other than that, needs to oppose immigration. I think that's one thing that they need to do that will change their appearance in the eyes of many, many a person. I will say that.
We have to get smarter on immigration, that's for sure.
I love listen. I love immigrants. I've had immigrants in my life, my whole life. They've come into my dad's a university professor. I've had students come live with us randomly for 6 months. Like, lots of people that I work with I love immigrants. They're wonderful people. But when you have too many people come into your country at once, it affects the economy. It affects the culture. You need to do things on a more regulated and more relaxed pace.
Yeah, I have lots to say on that, but I think the point that I'm trying to make is that it is not enough for other parties to collapse. I think the NDP themselves need to rise again. I think Jack Layton, it took him a while, right? Jack Layton only formed official opposition after what I believe was his third federal election, might have even been fourth. He ran in 2006. Was there a 2006 election?
Yes, that's where Stephen Harper was first elected, I think.
No. Harper came in 2008. Is that right? No, 2006. You're right.
Yeah, I remember because I was in grade 6.
Layton run in 2006. Yeah. 2006, 2008, and 2011. And it might maybe even 2003. I'm not sure. But anyway, it took Jack Layton a while. He built a relationship with Quebec over many elections, right? He improved his French. You can see Avi doing that. Like, sorry to say, Avi's the only candidate who's really worked hard on his French.
Tony McQuail, translators.
As a Quebecer, I do believe that you should speak both languages as a federal leader.
I agree. I do actually agree.
That's debatable. And Avi really is putting in the work. Heather McPherson, not good at French, je m'excuse. But more than that, I think that Avi is someone who is committed to building relationships with people, taking the time really outline his vision. I don't think that people will all get it right away. I don't think that people will trust him right away, but that I think that in the same way that Bernie Sanders, right, spent an entire career trying to explain what he was talking about, repeating things over and over and over again. We are seeing
getting
that the
nothing
Bernie
done.
Sanders brand. What do you mean getting nothing done?
Effectively. It doesn't matter. He's been advocating for the same ideas for so long, and he hasn't been able to really get any of it done. So, look, the guy's doing the work. I love Bernie, but it is what it is.
Bernie Sanders almost was the Democratic nominee
I'm aware.
in 2016
Yes.
and 2020. Let's be very clear.
He got shafted both times by the establishment and should have won both times.
That's right.
But he's a lone voice. He's a lone voice in the Senate, so he's only able to advocate for his position.
He's not a lone voice in the Senate.
Yes, he is.
No,
he's an independent.
No. I know he is, but he votes with the Democrats, and he has people like Elizabeth Warren and others who are Democratic socialists. You see, there are tons of them.
He has built himself some allies. Yeah, I'll say that. Yes, he's built himself some allies at this point. And I don't think Elizabeth's one of them. I think she's a snake.
But the point that I'm trying to make is it takes time when you have big ideas. It takes time to have those ideas resonate with people. I think that if Avi gets a couple shots, that he really spends the time that is needed to build a relationship with voters across Canada, across demographics, I think that there is an actual shot that he could usher in a second orange wave.
I have high hopes for Avi, but unfortunately, after the woodland creatures cast their vote, Tony McQuail will take the victory. All the rabbits and squirrels and mice and badgers will come out. All of the land of Narnia will come vote for Tony McQuail, and he shall be reign victorious.
Indeed.
Well, everyone.
Okay. Well, cool. We'll keep your eyes open for the race announcement.
Go out and vote. Vote, everybody. Assuming
and if you are an NDP member who haven't voted, though it is unlikely, please go ahead and vote.
Thanks for stopping by, folks.
Say hello to my little friend!